Red and blue lights flashed behind her on a quiet highway at 9 p.m. She hadn't run a light. She hadn't been speeding. Her only crime, according to the officer's report, was looking suspicious in a nice car. What happened in the next 4 minutes would end with that officer's hands shaking, and it had nothing to do with a ticket. Before we go further, hit subscribe. What happens at the end of this story is something you need to see for yourself. The highway was quiet, just past 9 at night. Detective Renee Carter drove home the way she always did after a double shift. Windows cracked, radio low, mind still replaying case notes from the day. She wasn't speeding. She hadn't run a light. She'd done nothing except drive a clean black sedan down a road she'd driven 1,000 times before. Red and blue lights lit up behind her. She sighed, checked her mirror, and pulled over calmly, hands already resting on the wheel where they could be seen. Officer Kyle Bennett approached slowly, flashlight sweeping the interior of her car before he even reached the window. "License and registration," he said, voice flat, eyes scanning her. Not the car, her. "May I ask why I was stopped, officer?" Renee asked, calm as still water. "Nice car for this neighborhood," he said, not really answering. Just seemed suspicious. Renee's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed level. She'd heard this before. Too many times to count. "I live 4 blocks from here," she said. Bennett didn't respond. He took her license, glanced at it, then back at her, lingering a beat too long, the way people do when they've already decided something about you before they know anything real. "Step out of the vehicle," he said. Renee reached slowly for her door handle, deliberate, careful, the practiced caution of someone who understood exactly how dangerous these moments could become. She stepped out and reached into her coat. Bennett's hand instinctively moved toward his holster. "Ma'am, keep your hands where I can." Renee held up a leather badge wallet, flipping it open under the streetlight. Bennett's flashlight beam froze mid-sweep. Because the badge in her hand didn't just say police. It said something that made his blood run cold. Bennett stared at the badge, his flashlight beam trembling slightly in his grip. "Internal Affairs, Detective Renee Carter. You're—" He started, voice suddenly unsteady. "You're IA." "Detective Carter," she confirmed, voice calm but edged with something sharper now. "Internal Affairs Division, badge number 2249. Bennett's face drained of color. His hand slowly lowered from his holster, though it didn't quite stop shaking. I wasn't," he stammered, the confident authority from moments ago completely gone. "You weren't what?" Renee asked, stepping closer, badge still in hand. "Profiling a woman driving through her own neighborhood, because that's exactly what your dashcam is about to show." His eyes flicked toward his patrol car, toward the small, blinking red light on the dashboard camera he'd forgotten was even running. "Ma'am, I was just doing a routine." "There was no routine," Renee cut in, her voice steady, but carrying real weight now. "I didn't run a light. I wasn't speeding. You told me yourself. I looked suspicious in a nice car. That's not routine, Officer Bennett. That's exactly what my division investigates." Bennett swallowed hard, his mouth suddenly dry. "This isn't the first complaint about you, is it?" Renee asked quietly. He said nothing, which told her everything. 3 complaints in 14 months, she continued. All dismissed. All from black residents in this exact neighborhood. All citing the same reason. Looked suspicious. Bennett's jaw clenched. "Those were reviewed and—" "Reviewed by who?" Renee interrupted. "Because I've read every file. Every single one was closed within 48 hours without a single follow-up interview." The silence between them stretched, heavy and suffocating. Bennett finally spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "What happens now?" Renee closed her badge wallet slowly. "Now," she said, "you're going to find out exactly how thorough internal affairs can be." Bennett's hands trembled slightly as he reached for his radio. "Don't," Renee said quietly. "Not yet." He froze, confusion flickering across his face. "You're not calling this in?" "I already did," she said. 20 minutes ago, before I even got in my car tonight." His eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Renee stepped closer, her voice low and deliberate. "This wasn't a random stop, Bennett. I requested this route tonight. I wanted to see for myself." The color that had barely returned to his face drained out again. "You set this up?" "I built a pattern report 6 weeks ago," she said. "Every complaint against you had one thing in common. They all happened on this stretch of road, between 8 and 10 p.m., targeting drivers in newer vehicles. I wanted to know if the pattern was real." Bennett's throat tightened. "It was one time I made a judgment call." "You've made this same judgment call 4 times, Renee said. "I have the timestamps, the locations, the radio logs requesting backup for suspicious vehicles that turned out to be nothing every single time. Except tonight, you weren't dealing with nothing." He looked down at the badge still visible in her coat pocket, the weight of the moment finally crashing over him. "I could lose my job over this," he said quietly. "You should have thought about that 4 stops ago," Renee replied, not unkindly, but without softness either. A patrol car's headlights appeared down the road, slowing as it approached. Bennett's breath caught. "Who's that?" Renee turned, watching the vehicle pull up behind his cruiser. "That," she said, "would be your supervisor. I called him the moment you asked me to step out of my car." Bennett's legs nearly buckled as Sergeant Michael Torres stepped out of the vehicle, expression unreadable, clipboard in hand. Because what happened next wasn't going to be a conversation. It was going to be a formal review, starting immediately. Sergeant Torres approached slowly, his eyes moving between Bennett and Renee with practiced neutrality. "Detective Carter," he said, nodding respectfully. "Everything unfold the way you expected?" "Exactly," Renee replied. "Dashcam should have the full stop on record. Audio and video both." Bennett stood rigid, his earlier confidence completely stripped away. "Sergeant, I can explain. You'll get that chance," Torres said, cutting him off, though his tone wasn't cruel, just tired, like a man who'd seen this pattern before and hoped he wouldn't have to see it again. "Formally, on record, tomorrow morning." He turned to Bennett. "Radio and firearm. Now, you're on administrative leave pending investigation." Bennett's hands shook as he unclipped his radio, the reality of the moment finally settling into his bones. "This wasn't personal," Renee said quietly, watching him. "I didn't do this to end your career." Bennett looked up at her, something between anger and shame in his eyes. "Then why?" "Because 4 people before me didn't have a badge to show you," she said. 4 people who probably went home shaking, wondering if just existing in the wrong neighborhood was going to get them hurt. They didn't get an investigation, they got dismissed. Her voice hardened slightly. "I'm not the exception here, Bennett. I'm the one person you stopped who happened to have the power to make sure this didn't happen to someone else." Torres cleared his throat. "The other 3 complainants have been notified their cases are being reopened, formally this time." Bennett's face went pale again. "All 3? "All 3, Renee confirmed. "And depending on what the dashcam shows tonight, likely a 4th, retroactively." The night air felt heavier now, the flashing lights behind them casting long shadows across the empty road. Bennett had one final question, and it came out barely above a whisper. "What happens to me now?" Renee's answer would determine everything that came next, for him and for every officer on this force who thought a badge made them untouchable. Renee studied him for a long moment before answering. "That's not up to me," she said. "That's up to the review board, and honestly, it's up to you." Bennett blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean there's a difference between an officer who makes 1 bad call under pressure," she said, "and an officer who's built 4 bad calls into a pattern and let it slide every time because nobody made him answer for it." She stepped closer, her voice steady, but not without weight. "Which one are you, Bennett? Because the board is going to ask you that exact question tomorrow, and your answer matters more than you think." He swallowed hard, silence stretching between them. "I don't know," he admitted quietly. "I never really thought about it that way. I told myself I was being careful. Doing my job. Careful of what exactly?" Renee asked. A woman driving home from work in her own neighborhood. The question landed heavier than any accusation could have. Bennett looked down, genuine shame settling into his expression for the first time that night. I don't have a good answer for that. Good, Renee said, because pretending you did would have been worse. Sergeant Torres stepped forward, holding out a clipboard. Formal statement. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. sharp. Bring your union rep if you want one. Bennett nodded slowly, taking the clipboard with hands that had finally stopped shaking, replaced now by something quieter. Reflection, maybe. Or the beginning of it. As Torres led him back toward the patrol car, Renee remained standing on the empty roadside, badge still in hand. 3 weeks later, the department announced sweeping changes. Mandatory bias awareness retraining, an independent review process for all suspicious activity stops, and a public commitment to reopening dismissed complaints from the past 2 years. Bennett wasn't fired. He completed retraining, transferred precincts, and, according to his new supervisor, became one of the most cautious, deliberate officers on the force. Not because he was punished into compliance, but because one night, a woman with a badge made him actually see what his judgment had cost other people. Renee never sought recognition for it. She simply went back to work the next morning. Another file closed, another pattern broken, not with anger, but with the quiet, relentless persistence of someone who understood that real justice isn't loud. It's consistent.